Welcome. This is Archive DS, raw, or out on the street, talking about stuff we talk about during the day about urban issues, and we thought we'd share it with others. Easy as that.
Yeah, pretty simple. You know, we constantly have these conversations that we find pretty engaging and enlightening, and we thought.
At least we do.
Yeah, at least we do, and hopefully
some others may too.
Yeah, hopefully you will too. Typically, they're on some subject, of course, related to city building, and it gives us something that we want to dig a little deeper into with the conversation that we thought we'd share with everybody out there. So this is that conversation.
Yeah, we're always talking about cities or some issue that we came across when we're touring or traveling, or things that we identify as don't work anymore, that work better, that we see that is good or not so good. And we were having dinner this evening after a long day working here in Toronto, and we've been working on some projects here, and then we went out to dinner afterwards, and up came a conversation about
books. Of course, and
we love books.
Yeah, we definitely love books, and we started talking about bookstores and the state of bookstores today, and bookstores in the past, and our thoughts about different locations and what we think the future of the bookstore might be. It was a pretty interesting topic, so we thought we'd share it with you guys.
And we hear a lot of people talking about the demise of the bookstore or the loss of the bookstore. And I think for whatever reason tonight, as we were walking, somehow the thought of a particular bookstore that we know and loved, I should say, because it's no longer with us, that came to my mind, and I brought it up, and immediately we both thought about how much we were connected to this bookstore. It's a place that's literally a stone's throw from where we're at here in the condo in Toronto, and it's the Nicholas Hoare Bookshop, right. And on Front Street, right across from Bursey Park.
Right. And we should qualify that it was a stone's throw from here.
Yeah,
it is no more a casualty of the new book economy over the past 15 years or so.
Yeah,
but it
died out for maybe 10 years ago, roughly, or so.
Yeah.
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah, a classic example of, the kind of bookstore you walk into. It had that British feel, of lots of wood on the interior and just packed to the hilt with books of all different subjects. One of the things that we loved about it is that we could go in and peruse it and find anything we wanted to find in a space that was probably 2,000 square feet at the most?
Yeah, roughly 2,000, about 20 by maybe 100. And a classic old building, a Victorian building from late 1800s. Hardwood floors, brick walls, high ceilings. I mean, all the elements that we know and love about these sort of spaces. And, of course, wall-to-wall books, and even a sort of a mezzanine space that you could walk up and overlook. So it was a terrific bookstore, and I think it came to mind, and for whatever reason, I have no idea what triggered it, but it came to mind, and I thought, wow, really miss this bookstore. And I think that one of the things we then talked about with a whole series of bookstores that we loved and always found a need to go to see what was new, to just experience that whole sort of book, the smell of a bookstore, the feel of a bookstore, and all the gems that you uncover when you walk around and see that. But also the whole idea of how important books are to us, I guess, is how much we've learned from books, how much we connect to it. We're inspired by all these different things that, the different topics and different people that have written great stuff, and many of which are friends of ours who've written books and inspired us to write our own that we're working on, and also the way that books educate people about cities, which of course they educated us. Of course, books have been incredibly important to our development as architects and urban designers and city builders. But I think that the general public, not just architects, people in the industry, but the general public will have engaged architecture and urbanism as something that inspires them and that they love. I've talked to so many people who are not architects, that are not in the industry, but yet love cities, they love buildings, they love these kinds of things. And I think this connection to books is part of that awareness and bringing information to people and having them sort of connect and be inspired as well. So it's part of this whole sort of process of I guess awareness and education and inspiration.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. And one of the things that we talked about earlier was the rise, the demise, and the potential rise again of bookstores, and where we are in this process that started with sort of the large chain bookstores coming in and starting to eat away the market from the small independents, and then the major online retailers coming in and sort of eating away at the larger bookstores. And
it's been quite a process
yeah,
to follow it through.
Yeah, it's one of the industries that's been very largely hit, by this change in how we basically how we shop, and it's affected some of our dearly loved bookstores that we went to, and it also affects, when you really think about it, our global urban study, because one of the things that we did, no matter where we went in the world, was seek out first coffee shops, but then after that, bookstores.
Priorities.
Yeah, priorities. Yeah.
Gotta have our walkers.
Bookstores, and there's just a lot that come to mind. We were talking earlier about the number of bookstores we went to in London on Charing Cross Road. Just the classic old bookstores.
Yeah, the book row. Yeah,
book row. Yeah.
It was a very notable literary row, I think it was often called, and a whole series of bookstores of different sorts. Some were focused on art, philosophy, and history, and these different things. And for so many decades, that sort of row just north of Piccadilly Circus was such a critical place for books. And when we first started going to London, those were all still there, and we would go and traverse that street and go in and out many of them, and it was really a great experience. This little sort of segment of central London that had all of these bookstores that were collectively making a place that was quite distinctive. And one of the big one, Foyles, was this multi-story, gigantic one, but there were so many little ones that had different areas of focus, and really, like so many other places, they've all largely dropped off the map, and really, Foyles is still there, of course, but for the most part, the row is no longer, and it's really sad now to think that it's been that. It was very prominent not long ago, and it was diminished very, very quickly, and that happened here in Toronto as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that we would really love to do would be, whenever we were in Toronto, we would go to Ballanford Books, which was the architectural bookstore in the Annex. We would go to Balfour Books, which thankfully is still here, but it was in a different location. We would go to David Mirvish Books, was focused on art and architecture and culture, and a phenomenal big modern space in the Annex next to Ballanford's. And we would go to Pages, another great bookstore. It had a lot of really interesting cultural things, and world's biggest bookstore.
Yeah.
Another one that had a huge amount of bookstore with books in different departments and topics, and we would spend way too much time in that place. And then, of course, Nicholas Hoare, as we mentioned, which, of course, one of our favorites in the list, and a number of others that we had, and pretty much at this point, all gone.
All gone.
All gone. And the big ones the chapters in the Indigo and in the States Borders and Barnes and Noble, many of which are all either gone or cut down into just a few stores, and many of them are sort of connected to malls and don't really have the character and the location that enhance the urban experience that we came to really enjoy. And so the transformation has been pretty dramatic and largely negative. I mean, for the most part.
But as we mentioned, we're starting to see signs of life over the last couple of years with small, independent, and very, very niche-oriented bookstores. Specific genres. We see that, and also used in rare bookstores, like our one of our favorites for sure, John King.
King in Detroit.
In Detroit,
yeah, one of the biggest in all of the country.
Yeah. But all of these bookstores that we frequented in our travels, and I think it's good to see that there are still signs of life with some of these independents. I think that's really important, and I think the independent used bookstores especially, because whenever I go to John King or we go to Balfour Books, we always find something that we weren't expecting. Some book,
especially Balfour Books, here in Toronto.
Right, something we never expected or never knew existed, and we'll find something. So that's one of the things about bookstores. It's similar to like Blockbuster Video back in the day. It's this idea that you can go in there and you can discover something. And I think that's something that we've lost, with our move towards digital shopping and digital ownership, quote unquote, of our resources. So I think we got to think about that too.
Yeah, and I think part of it is this idea of a bookstore being in a neighborhood or a district, and actually helps to create an accent in that particular area. Mm-hmm. So there's a sort of a focal point where people can come and gather. It's really, in many ways, a third place. Like we talk about, Oldenburg's third place. The first being, home, office, and then third being sort of a bar, a pub, a cafe, what have you, where people tend to go. Well, in many ways, and we think about the importance of bookstores in the urban environment. In many ways, those were third places to us, and I think a lot of people who would use that as a place to go, a destination, a place to sort of spend some time and to enjoy, an afternoon or a morning, whatever. So that, I think, going back to the importance of these particular types of uses in an urban environment, how important that actually is. And I think recognizing how it's a cultural enhancement, it's a placemaking enhancement, it's an asset to a community, And that's just one. Of course, cafes and other things are like that as well. But I think, a lot of people think of bookstores as just a place to buy books, but I think there's a lot more to that. Of course, is what we recognize and lived and experienced, that they really are very important elements. And so I think hopefully, granted, the culture or the circumstance and the financial condition of today's world of online and competition through price discounts and all that, it's a very challenging environment for books, for sure, no question. And it's not like it was 20 years ago and much before. But I think that we are seeing this resurgence. I think that these idea of having these particular focal points for certain bookstores will distinguish them and make them be allowed to thrive or be active, and that's what we can hope. But I think to some degree, the start of this conversation was really just reminiscing on the loss of these places that we really loved, that we really recognized were very important, and maybe just recognizing how important they are to the urban experience.
Right, and that brings up something that we didn't talk about, that I was just thinking about, is that one of the things that a lot of bookstores are doing is in trying to become third places, is having things like poetry readings and book clubs,
book signings,
and all of those kinds of things to bring people in. And I guess my question would be, is that necessarily the right thing to do? That's a not really a rhetorical question. That's a question that I don't really know the yes or no answer to. As opposed to, being a different kind of third place, because it sometimes it seems like poetry readings and book signings are, while they seem natural, they don't necessarily. I'm trying to think of exactly how to say it. They aren't always the draw that you think they are to bookstores, because I think people go to bookstores for the experience of being among books and finding books, and I think it's almost, again, I bring up the Blockbuster Video example, where you go there and you go there to find something, but also to talk about the genre and the product that's there. And I think a lot of times I'll go to a bookstore and I'll go in and the person there isn't really engaging. And I think just engaging with the customers a little bit more, I think, will raise the profile, and talking to them about new things that you've gotten in.
Well, that goes to the whole idea of creating, service and in a special place. That I think it's one of the advantages that sort of brick and mortar places have come to realize, is that if they can't beat, sort of Amazon and whomever on price, they can beat them on personal experience, personal connection, service, creating that place where the customer knows that it's of value to the community. And I think that's where they can build some level of strength and potentially, recreate some level of existence in the modern world of the economy and the challenge of brick and mortar versus online.
Yeah, and I can't do this without giving a shout out to the bookstore in my neighborhood, Juniper Books, who's really gotten into social media and posting the latest quirky new book that's come in. At least every week, if not every couple of days, they'll have a post about some new book that they just got in. And I think that kind of staying in front of people and really showing them exactly what's in your store, I think is important.
Well, it goes to the fundamentals of good, business, which is, being able to be on top of things, hustling a little harder, doing a little extra, and connecting to the customer, and ultimately seeing some success. Yeah. So those are areas where we hope that we see some growth, potentially some stability, and maybe we'll get some level of the bookstore back into our society. We can only hope that's the case. Is not a lot of signs. I mean, there's signs of rebirth and signs of growth in some areas, like you said, sort of areas with certain topic focuses and things like that. But it's a big challenge, and it's transforming, it's evolving. So we'll see where it goes. But this is an important element of the urban experience. We're about urban experiences, city building great communities, building better cities. And this is just one of those parts of cities that we not only have come to love over the years, but we're saddened by the loss, and I guess somewhat invigorated by the hope for potential new growth. So we thought we'd share that with others and open up the dialogue for where we can hopefully see some positive growth in bookstores going forward. Yeah, can hope and pray.
So thank you for joining us for this archive raw talk regarding bookstores. And as we always say,
walk the streets.